Hi, I'm Blair Gadsby, and I'm the gentleman who had been hunger striking for 17 days out in front of Mr. McCain's office in the latter part of May and early June. With me is Richard Gage, the author of A&E 9/11 Truth, the originator of 9/11 Truth, AE 9/11 Truth, and he was one of the principal scientists who supported the effort and said that he would lend his voice to any response that Mr. McCain and the popular mechanics scientists said that should they step up to the plate and decide to address the issues that I was attempting to raise with the hunger strike, that he would be there to support me. So thank you, Richard, for coming and sitting with me at this point. I really want to address what Mr. McCain said on the campaign trail a couple of days ago. It was Thursday of earlier this week, where he was asked by an Ohio We Are Change supporter about the hunger strike, and Mr. McCain said that he was aware of the hunger strike having taken place, and in fact I had received his letter that was signed by him, so I was already aware that he was aware of what was going on, but I had called off the hunger strike at the time that I had received the assurance from Mr. Hickman in the Arizona office that a response was forthcoming. So I felt it was, and the group felt that it was a good moment to call off the hunger strike, given we had gone 17 days and we had certification that a response was coming. Now it's been a couple of weeks since the hunger strike's over. I long have posted the response of the letter, and the world has seen it, I guess you could say. But I was very troubled or puzzled by Mr. McCain's response to the answer to that Ohio We Are Change question, in which he said that he didn't take well to threats. I guess I could say I was a little hurt by that. I certainly saw myself as nothing of a threat to Mr. McCain. I really felt as though I was appealing to him. And even to this moment, I'm of the firm belief that there's very few people who could pull us out of this mess that we find ourselves in now. Of course, you all understand what my essential premise is and what architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth premise is, and that is that these buildings were brought down in something other than simply the planes crashing into them. And obviously one of the critical elements is this Building 7. Again, please watch Building 7 come down, Mr. McCain. I think that will begin to get some questions sparked into your own mind. But at this moment, I just feel like I want to reiterate what it was I was trying to accomplish in the hunger strike, and it was by no means to threaten my senator. I'm an utterly, completely nonviolent person. I was appealing, almost begging him to please look at this material. And I know now that Mr. McCain has the A&E 9/11 Truth DVD that Richard has produced, which gives a point-by-point description of the characteristics of a controlled demolition. I'll let Richard say a little bit more about that in a moment. But Mr. McCain, why did you believe that this was a threat to you? I don't understand that. I really fail to understand that. The only thing that I believe that I could have been a threat to, or in fact what A&E 9/11 Truth could be a threat to, is a falsehood, is something that is not true. If the investigators of September the 11th were sincerely seeking the truth, I believe they would have embraced our effort and embraced the information that Mr. Gage has offered up. And I can only say at this point I'm extremely puzzled, disappointed, and even somewhat hurt that my own senator would consider me a threat to him, when most certainly I am not. And I'd like to just give Richard Gage an opportunity to say, well, whatever he'd like to say, but basically what it was that he would have said had you and Mr. McCain and the scientists of popular mechanics met with us and given us those 2 hours. So again, I just want to take a moment to thank you, Richard, for standing beside me while I went through the hunger strike. It was very critical to getting many of the others in the 9/11 Truth movement kind of behind the effort. A hunger strike is by no means unanimously agreed upon as a proper course of action. So I had a little selling to do with my fellow 9/11 Truthers here. But just the same, you stood with me, and I appreciated that so much. And thank you.
You're so welcome, Blair. You are a hero of mine in many of those in the 9/11 Truth movement. This is an act of courage, an act that inspired all of us. So please. There are a number of people who are out on the street raising awareness for 9/11 truth. Why? The answer to that question is because our country is at stake, and I know that you, Senator McCain, love America as well. The 400 architects and engineers that I represent love our country, and we are among the most non-threatening people you can find, the building technical professionals who have looked closely at the NIST report, the FEMA report, the American Society of Civil Engineers work. We've found it wanting so badly for accuracy, and what we have found in our investigation is actually kind of shocking. What we found is that it appears that all 3 World Trade Center high-rise buildings were brought down not by airplane impacts, jet fuel, fires, but by explosive controlled demolition. It's not a matter of conjecture. It's not a matter of conspiracy theory. It appears the evidence is rock solid, that every architect and engineer who spends at least a half an hour looking at the evidence agrees with us that we have a very serious problem here with these previous investigations. We have a very serious problem, in fact, in our country, because we're concerned that Al-Qaeda may not have had access to these buildings to plant these explosives. There's some very simple evidence as it accrues. We have what amounts to a free fall speed of collapse almost in the Twin Towers and in Building 7 against thousands of tons of structural steel designed to resist that load. Now these buildings can't collapse at free fall speed, and where all their gravitational potential is converted to kinetic energy and crush all that steel. It's physically impossible. That's the main issue right there. In addition, we have asymmetrical damage to all 3 of these buildings, but we have a virtually symmetrical collapse. We have molten metal found at the base of all 3 buildings. This is well over 4,000 degrees. Molten metal has no basis being produced by, it can't be produced by office fires, which only get to be about 1,400 degrees at their hottest Fahrenheit. What produced all the molten metal? It turns out to be molten iron. Molten iron is the byproduct of thermite cutter charges. The molten iron has in it the chemical evidence of thermite cutter charges. This is aluminum, iron, sulfur, the potassium and manganese, fluorine, and 1,3-diphenyl propane appears to be the sol gel binder, making this a very, very explosive thermite in the case of the Twin Towers. Every architect, engineer, and other who looks at this information for at least half an hour or in one of our 2-hour presentations comes to the conclusion that this is a very, very serious problem, the controlled demolition of these buildings. We know, again, Al-Qaeda did not have access to the buildings. So we're talking about a disturbing set of circumstances, and this is why, extremely disturbing, this is why the 9/11 Truth Movement is growing by millions every year, and why we'll have 1,000 architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth by September 11th, 2008. Blair, what do you think? Are we going to get through here to Mr. McCain?
I don't know who else we could get through to, Richard. But I just want to try to understand where you are coming from, Mr. McCain. Please, I meant no threat to you. In fact, I feel, and I believe we in this room and the American people have good cause for themselves to feel threatened by the way circumstances are today.